Alright everybody, let's go ahead and get started. So just like in the spirit of all the other lectures, let's start with a game of global. But I also want to point out we have a very special celebrity in the audience today. We have Gerald here. Geraldo is the person I mentioned, he's my advisor. He was also me, him, and Jerry sort of like helped create the course. He's watching to see how I teach, so it very much feels like when the principal walks in on the class, like teaching properly. So we'll hope that this goes well.
I should ask for it.
Oh yeah, I did ask for it to pick up. Okay, so we're gonna play this game one more time. I understand it's like the third time now. I'll introduce a different game for next lecture, so you know the variety is still there. Gerald, we're gonna actually have you guess the first country. So this is like, our goal this time is gonna guess the country in 7 or fewer guesses, okay? I think the first time it took 20, then it was like 12. So hopefully we keep this steady improvement. Gerald, all you have to do is just guess any country to like start us off with like the guessing sequence. So any country you want.
Sure. Kenya.
Kenya, okay. So we are 1,500 miles away from Kenya. Somebody else wanted to just yell out a country, and keep in mind we want it to be good guesses, okay? So try to think of maybe somewhere kind of far away.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Okay, that's cooler. Kenya is closer than Saudi Arabia.
Dominican Republic.
Okay, so let's hear a couple others and then I'll pick the one that maybe might be closer. I heard Dominican Republic. Any other guesses?
Liberia.
Liberia. Any other guesses?
South.
Okay, let's do Dominican Republic. Okay, that's cooler. Wow, this is gonna be tough. We only have 4 more guesses. Anyone else? Kenya is still the closest one.
South Africa.
South Africa. Oh, okay, that was an amazing guess. So it's adjacent to the answer, and we have 3 more guesses. So let's try to get this right. Yeah, over there. Madagascar. I don't think it would count as adjacent.
Is it that country that's like in the middle?
Yeah, does anyone know what it's called?
Is it Lesotho?
Yeah, I think it's Lesotho. Oh, it's cooler? Okay, so we have 2 guesses now. Maybe up right above South Africa. Yeah.
Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe. Does that border? I'm not sure.
It does.
It does? It does? Okay.
Small border.
Oh, never mind. Okay, last guess, everybody. We gotta make this one count. You can open Google Maps and just check. Which one do you think is adjacent? Yeah.
Eswatini.
Oh, Eswatini? Okay. Oh, nice. That was awesome. Okay, good job, everyone. We got it in 7. Next time we'll introduce a little different geography game and see. Maybe by the end I can poll everyone and see which game you like the most, and then that'll just be a cool little finding.
You know
Okay.
the one that shows you a picture of a place, like a farm or something, you have to guess.
Yeah, GeoGuessr. I love that one. That
was
was good. But now you have to pay even to do like small rounds of it, so that's why I couldn't do that one. Okay, everybody, let's go ahead and start with the announcements. So today is the deadline for assignment 1, but like we mentioned, you have a 24-hour grace period, so you can submit it up until tomorrow night without having to let me know. I want to just clarify the actual way that you submit this assignment, okay? So you're going to be creating something called a pull request on your GitHub Classroom. That's the only thing you need to do to actually submit the assignment. There's no grade scope or like Canvas involvement or anything here. Just to show y'all what it's like to actually create this pull request. So first and most importantly, you'll have to like actually create a branch, like a separate branch in your VS Code that is not the main branch, okay? I think this is mentioned in the project write-up, but you can see here I'm on a branch called like project 1, okay? You just want to name this something that will help you identify what we are doing on this branch. So once you've like actually created the branch and then you make a commit to it, you can manually create this pull request by going to like the web application version of your repository. So once you open it, you can actually see the different branches that you have here. I think you can ignore these dependabot ones. This gets automatically created when we configure the GitHub Classroom. You actually don't even need to like select this one right now to actually create the pull request. Just select this pull request option here, and then you'll create a new pull request in the top right. Okay, so we clicked on pull request, new pull request, and then here you have to like specify what the like origin, like what branch we want to eventually pull into, and we have to specify the branch we want to pull our original branch into, kind of. So the base branch is going to be main because we are going to pull something into main, and what we want to pull is project 1, okay? This process should only happen after you have made changes to setup.md in your project 1 branch, okay? So after you do all the changes to setup.md, include your snapshots, your screenshots, and then make a commit. You want to push the changes on project 1 so that your project 1 is like up to date with whatever you find you want to submit. And then when you're ready to submit, you'll make this pull request, okay? And then one more thing I want to clarify is, so like this is an example, say you actually make your changes. I just did this sort of like small changes just to show, this will show all the commits that you've made, this will summarize the changes that you've made. You can create a pull request, and there is actually like an existing comment here that asks for like a specific format of the pull request. I didn't realize it at the time when I made this, but this is the actual pull request like template for when you are making an actual contribution to CPython on like the GitHub or like for the open source project, okay? So you actually don't need to conform to this like template. For this project, you could just write up, this is my project 1 submission, but in project 2, 3, and 4, there's going to be specific things that we ask you to include in the pull request description, okay? Typically, these pull request descriptions should be pretty informative to whoever is going to be reviewing the actual pull request, okay? I'll talk more about like how the grading and stuff will go, but it'll be me and the tutors that will be reviewing your pull requests. Does this make sense for how to submit the changes? Are there any questions? Yeah.
Does the branch need to have a specific name or just?
No, it can be anything, but ideally something that is kind of informative, like project 1 or setup or building or something like that. Yes.
What's the difference between like pulling a pull request and like git merge on the remote?
I think a merge will just merge like one branch into another branch, but a pull request I think is helpful because there's this like actual process of like code review that we can do from when we want to ensure that the changes from one branch should be into the changes of the other branch. So we'll just have this extra like code review step. And we're going to spend a lot of time on code review and what that process is actually like. And typically these will happen on like pull requests. There will be a whole code review process. Okay, any other questions for assignment 1? Okay. Awesome. So let's go ahead and continue. One thing I did want to make an announcement on is like posting on EdStem, okay? So when we post on EdStem or even just like coming to office hours, we want to encourage you to have like looked into the problem a lot on your own, have tried a few different things that are even like outside of the developer guide. Maybe you've Googled a couple errors and you've learned something new through Googling those errors, and then you can like update the tutor or me like with what you've tried and what hasn't worked and specific error messages, okay? This is like not only helpful for in like a course setting logistically, but it's also a really important skill for industry. There was like a research article that came out a few years ago that talked about like the perspective of like managers of software engineering teams, and they talked about this issue where people are unsure of when to ask, like their employees are unsure of when to ask certain questions. So the two sort of extremes are you go ask your manager or just someone on the team a question without having really tried much. You like don't really know the problem space very much, and that becomes a little bit clear when the manager might ask questions like, what have you tried? What does this kind of mean? Or people wait too long to ask questions. They'll struggle for hours or days without asking a question that they actually need an answer to. So it's definitely a hard skill to have, but one thing that you can definitely do is starting off with doing some independent like searching online or reading some documentation to have a good understanding of the problem that you're dealing with, and then posing a question with some like added information. Okay, does this make sense? So this applies for posting on EdStem as well as coming into office hours, because like for those of you that have already come to my office hours, you know that what happens is I'll see the issue, the tutors and I will see the issue, and then we'll start Googling stuff and start looking for things to find. So yeah, just want to encourage this because this is how we'll sort of resolve these issues faster. Okay, any questions here? Awesome. And also one other thing, there's gonna be like people having the same issues that they encounter. So a couple of people had the same exact error message when they were trying to build their CPython. Make sure you check the EdStem. Or if you have the same problem that someone is posting on an EdStem, you can even comment that, oh, this is what worked for me. These are the specific like configuration parameters that I needed. These were the commands I needed to run, and that can also sort of help this process of like information seeking or help seeking. All right, any questions on this? Posting on EdStem or office hour questions? Okay, awesome. So the lecture outline for today, we didn't finish the code navigation techniques, so we'll spend a few minutes wrapping that up. And then we have an activity that will sort of like have y'all use a lot of these code navigation techniques. So remember, like the format for these lectures is I'll like demo something, and the goal is for y'all to use it in a actual like authentic setting or an authentic task that you might have to do. And then what we're going to do today is like the topic of the lecture is experimental code changes. So how can we like make small changes to the source code or add print statements in like a sort of like structured manner to learn more about like the purpose and like code flow of the program that we're dealing with. Okay, so we'll try to get through all of this, but just like last lecture, I'm hoping we can spend a good amount of time on the activities that we'll have y'all working on. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap up the code navigation. So what were we going over last time? I think we were in the format region, and it was comment region event. Okay, so what I want to point out for the outline view, I think this is exactly where we had ended last time. There's these like 3 buttons under the outline view where you can see like show cursor or follow cursor. And so what that does is like every time you click on something, it'll show you where in the file you are, okay? And this is really helpful when you don't have to be like fully zoomed in. Right now my VS Code is really zoomed in so that people in the back can see. But just for a quick second, I'll zoom out, and you can actually, by the way, I'm gonna press this collapse all button, okay? When you collapse all, it'll just show like the main functions or classes. Oh, thank you, Kushi, that's super helpful. Thanks. Is this better for people can still see, right? Okay, cool. So when you collapse all, you can see like the classes and the methods and even like the fields or the variables that are in a file. And then once you have like the follow cursor option on, then it'll like expand and show you exactly where you are in a file, okay? So the time that this will be like really useful is when you are trying to like rapidly search through information in a file, and instead of like scrolling through everything, remember the goal here is not to just be scrolling through code. All right, give me one second. Let's just dim it a little bit maybe. I think that should be good.
It's not gonna get just the one thing on the board.
Oh, there's different lights. Okay.
Because I don't want people to fall asleep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So remember, like scrolling through code and like quickly looking through the titles. That's kind of what we want to get away from. We don't want to just be like skimming through code and trying to find things that are useful. It's much more helpful to use this outline view that kind of already gives us the titles. We can parse through the titles, and then we can also see like relationships between where we are and like classes that are in the file, okay? So like for example, I can quickly tell right now I'm in the Tabify region event, and that's in the format region class, okay? And so one thing that might be a little bit different that we're working in like a large code base with so many different like classes and methods is it's maybe not enough to just know that there is a Tabify region event, okay? What is more useful to us is maybe understanding that, okay, we have a lot of these events like dedent region, comment region, uncomment region that seem to all be in the class format region, right? We want to like have our understanding of the code base beyond just like I know that there is a comment region event function. It's going to be really helpful to you, especially on future projects, if you can start understanding like the code structure of this, right? That remember a lot of the features that we saw that are in the format tab. So let me actually just go ahead and run this right now. Remember that a lot of the things that we saw that are in format, dedent region event, indent region, comment out region, tend to be in this class format region, okay? Now I'm not going to give it away now, but there's other such like patterns that you'll start seeing in the code base, and the earlier you're able to sort of like pick up on these, the easier like the assignments are going to be for you. And using stuff like outline view is a really helpful way to sort of pick up on that. One other thing I want to point out with regards to outline view is these things up here. So this kind of does give a different view of outline view. But so these are called breadcrumbs in VS Code. I just learned about them. Cushy actually like sent a really interesting like link about how you can use these. I had no idea you could actually click on these and sort of like see the outline of all the things in the same like level as that object, okay? Or as the thing in this breadcrumb. So for example, when you click on format.py, you just get to see a list of all the other files, right? The other files are sort of the thing in the same hierarchy as format.py. Then when you click on format region, you see all of the things that are in the same hierarchy as format region in the file. So all of like, you know, the classes or definitions that are sort of in the like global space of the file that are not like nested within other classes or functions. So this is also another helpful way to navigate through a specific file or even a code base just to understand like the relationships between where we're at, and you know, if we want to go to a different class, we can easily click on format region and then see the class that we want to go to. Yes?
Sorry, how did you turn on the follow cursor?
Yeah, the follow cursor is the 3 dots here in outline view. You could do follow cursor, I think filter on type. I wonder if this will do anything for our code base. I don't know if it's able to tell the type of a lot of these. I'm not sure. We can experiment with this and see. Okay, anyway, I'll move on from outline. Are there any questions about outline view or anything I just showed? You want me to show it again? Yeah, Charles?
I wonder if the font size is visible from
Oh yes, thanks. Let me zoom back in. Sorry, I zoomed out so I could show you how helpful outline view can be when you're not zoomed in so much. Is this better? Are people able to see in the back kind of? Okay, cool. Also, all of these should be podcasted on Canvas, all the lectures now. Let me know if you're not able to see it. This is my first time, you know, interacting with Canvas. I just want to make sure that the videos are going out as they're supposed to. But if there's ever a point where you like are outside of lecture and want to know what exactly I sort of did on my VS Code, you can always pull up the podcast. Okay, let's move on to next and previous cursor location. So I think I showed this last lecture as well. But here are the specific shortcuts. This is on a Mac. Again, it might be slightly different on a Windows. And you can actually pull up the YouTube video that was linked in last lecture to see, you know, the different shortcuts on the different machines. But to show you sort of like the use case of next and previous cursor location. So say I'm like, you know, initially in this format.py, I'm in the function do rstrip. And then say I open up like file list and click somewhere here in the init method, the initialization method here. And if I want to just go back to where I was before, obviously, you know, I guess I could click here, but let's say, you know, we have like so many different files open and we don't want to like scroll through a bunch of files or try to find the exact place, you can do command minus or control minus to just go back to exactly where you were before, and then you can do control shift minus to go forward, okay? So again, this is going to be really useful when we have like so many files open, we jump from one spot to the next, and we just want to quickly jump back and forth between where we just were, like in a chronological order. Okay, now we're getting sort of more to like the meta, like tips and techniques in VS Code. This thing called command palette is going to be super useful, okay? So command palette is command shift P. And you'll see it opens up at the top here, this little like arrow, and then what you can do inside this box is type in all sorts of commands, okay? That's why it's called the command palette. So you can like type in, you'll see some of these like preset options, go to symbol in editor, go to references, add cursor below, add cursor above. I won't get into what these are now. Well, essentially you can have like multiple cursors in VS Code. You can say like, I want a cursor on line 127, one on 130, one on 133, and then when you type, it'll start typing in like all of those places. It's pretty cool if you want to like change a lot of like similar lines at once. Anyway, that's a bit besides the point. The point here is that command palette shows a lot of the different options that you have. And importantly, I want to show this preferences open keyboard shortcuts, okay? So when you click on the open keyboard shortcuts, you can also just go to the command palette and then type in open keyboard shortcuts if it didn't pop up immediately as a recommendation. And you can see all the different commands as well as the key bindings. Key bindings are like what are the actual like keystroke combinations that will lead to this specific command, okay? And so you'll be able to see like what are the key bindings for your specific computer. And you can also change these key bindings if you want. So say there's something that you end up using a lot, like maybe you have to keep like adding a line comment or something, and you don't like that it's Command K and Command C. When there's two of these, it kind of means you have to do both actually. So you would do Command K, and then you have like 1 second to then press Command C, and then you would do this. Although on Mac, the Command K, there's some issue with it. I think Command K is also like another like Mac setting, and so there's a specific issue that VS Code points out in their documentation that these key bindings that have Command K and then something else in a Mac, there's some workaround for it. I don't actually know. Maybe I'll send it out in an SDM post. But if you're gonna test this right now, it might not work if you're on a Mac. But you can like totally modify any of these key bindings that might be easier for you to use, okay? And I think it's worth it to sort of scroll through and see what some of these keyboard shortcuts are, because I think there's so many of these that we haven't, might not have even known existed or considered, because the sort of like need to use some of these keyboard shortcuts might not have existed before. So I'm going to show you one such keyboard shortcut that I use quite a bit, and that's going to be go to symbol, okay? So go to symbol is Command T, okay? Command T, and what it does is it'll actually like open something in this command palette here, but it starts with a hashtag, okay? What this hashtag indicates is just that we are doing a go to symbol command. And you might have seen me actually use this. I've used this in the last couple lectures when I had to quickly open a specific function or class. But you can actually just type in, the actual object that you want to go to. So what you're actually doing is typing in a symbol, okay? A symbol in VS Code is just like a variable, an object, or a class that like VS Code is able to recognize as, an object, a variable, or a class. So you can type in like format region, and it'll be able to, you just press enter, and then you'll go directly there. Same thing with like comment region events, right? You can just type that in, it'll probably autocomplete, and then you can just press enter. So the time that this is very useful is when you are already somewhat familiar with the names of the classes or the names of the files, and you just want to quickly go there, right? Instead of me having to scroll through the left here and try to find format.py, and then when I get there, you'll have to like scroll through maybe the outline view or scroll through the file to try to get to the place you want. You can actually leverage the fact that you already know the name of the class or the name of the file that you want to go to, and just do like a simple, you can do a Command T and then go to whatever specific place you want to visit, okay? So this admittedly was a bit fast. I did want to, let me go over this one more thing before we get into the activity. This is peeking definitions and references, okay? So remember last time we kind of already showed how, say we have a class of, or a function of interest, comment region event, and we want to see like all of the things that refer or call comment region event. We can do like go to references, and okay, I guess this is actually already peeking it. Maybe we do like find all references, and it shows it in the left over here, right? And we saw last time like all the different things that might call comment region event, including stuff in the test file. If you don't want to like click through each one and actually go to each spot in the code base, because then you kind of like lose the place that you were already at, you can just do peek. So this option peek here, you can like peek references, okay? And then it'll just open up in this sort of like smaller window or smaller view in the actual file that you're at, and you can kind of see the stuff. You can click on each of these things and see the actual code without fully opening up that new file and then having to like navigate back to where you just were, okay? So this is like, you're unsure where you want to, maybe you know you have to go to start at comment region event, and then you have to make some change to the place that calls comment region event. You can do a quick peek first to see like, okay, where do I actually want to go? And maybe you realize, oh, I just have to go to this editor thing, and then you can double click on it, and then it'll open up the actual location, okay? So when there's like a lot of things that might call a certain function, so for example, last time we talked about get region and set region, right? If we want to go to like a specific function or specific method that calls this, we can just peek the references and say we realize like, oh, I wanted to go to the one in comment region event. You can easily click on this and be there. Okay? So these were a lot of shortcuts, like going back to even last lecture that I showed. The goal is for y'all to start using these like regularly, because at first it'll be very tempting to just do a global search or scroll to format.py and then scroll through maybe like outline view or scroll through the file and get to the spot that you want to be. But like I promise that using these will save you so much time. When I was starting to like develop this class, I didn't use a lot of these VS Code features. I learned a lot about a lot of these through like developing the materials for this class last year. And now like when I'm, for example, like up here having to do a demo rather than, you know, wasting time in the lecture trying to go like scroll to format.py and then scroll to the file of interest, it's super easy to just like go to symbol, okay? So it may not be so obvious at first that these things are helpful, but as you like work on a code base for a very long time, or not even super long, just for, you know, a few weeks like you'll be doing in this class, these will become like super valuable, all right? Are there any questions just on like the code navigation shortcuts that I've showed so far? Anything you want me to quickly go over again? Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and do this sort of like wrap-up activity on code navigation. So the feature that I actually want to show is when we run idle-lib, remember we want to be in our individual project folder. We'll do /python.exe to specify the executable that should run our source code. The -m means we want to run a specific Python module, and the name of the module is idle-lib, okay? When I go ahead and run idle, and then if I do new file, and say I have like def hello, and it's like print hi, and then I want to just run it, okay? When I do run module, it says source must be saved okay to save question mark, okay? And then you actually have to like press okay, you have to like save it as something, just do like test.py, and then it'll eventually run, okay? So what I want you to do for this activity is first, just find the code that implements this feature, find the specific method that implements this feature, and then I want you to use some of the code navigation techniques to find like the two types of user actions that will cause that code to be run, okay? So let me just specify what I mean one more time. Find the actual code that will is responsible for this little dialog opening up, okay? That says source must be saved, okay to save. And then what are the two types of user actions? You kind of just saw one, right? I just tried doing run module. Try to find the other one. Maybe there's more than one, but just try to find at least one other that causes that dialog box to pop up, okay? Are there any, there's no Google form for this, just take a few minutes to do it on your own, and then we'll have you discuss what you tried in pairs, and then I'll show a demo of how to go about doing this. And then in a minute or two, we'll have like me and the tutor start walking around, but try on your own for a couple minutes. Yeah. Yeah, so the question here is like, what do we mean by user actions? Specifically, like, what would a user do on the idle application to cause that source code to be run? So not even in terms of like, oh, this line of code calls this method, but what are the actual like user inputs or user actions in terms of idle that will cause that code to be run? And again, it's okay if you can't find it, just do your best and try to explore a couple different ways to get to that. Okay, we'll be walking around now. If anybody needs help, like has a question or is stuck on something, feel free to raise your hand and one of us will walk over and help. It'll be both in the whole object directory. Command shift that will do, yeah, so when you search, it just searches for that string. It'll look in comments, it'll look at like
strings that might be. Yeah, but the symbols are only like the variables or the functions or like last name or functions. Yeah, so I think just the hashtag, it thinks you're like searching for something that has a hashtag. But then once you start, I think once you start typing the actual like letters or stuff, then you'll start going, yeah, it looks like it's actually symbols. Oh, that's a great question.
Okay, yeah, if it's not clear already, you can start talking with like the people next to you and just hear what the other person's answer is, but what navigation techniques they actually use, okay? It should also be later.
Use the one that's in
Maybe you can try like you can try those later. Yeah, just I don't know though. For now, I'm just trying to work with I'll talk with If people have already found out like the second user action, try to find out what that second user action actually does. Like if you're unsure like what the actual option is that invokes this, maybe you can just Google it or just explore that a little bit more. Okay, it looks like the discussion is wrapping up a little bit actually, so let's go ahead and just go over this because we still have a couple more things to get through this lecture. So let's just go ahead and start with finding the source code. So can someone just raise their hand and tell me one thing that you tried to do to find where that like dialog box is like implemented? Yeah, over there.
I did Comprehension app, and then I typed in run module.
You typed in, oh, run module, okay. And then how did you look through this?
I first went to the README.
Okay.
I figured that one would have like a better description.
Nice.
And then I found that run modules, then I went to run scripts.
Oh, so you went to the file run script. Did you do that by clicking on this thing, or?
Yeah, just clicking on that one.
Sorry, you clicked on this?
It's all the way at the bottom.
Oh, my bad.
It's right there.
Oh, you clicked on this. Okay, I see. Awesome, yeah. And then you saw this, and then how did you proceed from here?
I just started looking through the functions, but.
Okay. So did you were like kind of like looking through here to just see if, like what code you could find that matches. Awesome. Did anybody try something else? Anybody want to share an approach? Yeah.
I just looked at the message that appears.
Yeah. So what was that message?
It's saved, or no, it's source must be saved.
Yeah. Source must be saved, and there's only one option, and then when you click on it, yeah, ask save dialog. Perfect. Were there any other approaches people used to find this? This is the one I used also, but if there is another one, I'd love to hear it, just to see if there's anyone. Yeah, go ahead.
So it was a really stupid way, but basically I searched save and then I tried to look through it, but it was so many.
Save, yeah. So that's what I was thinking people might do, but yeah, exactly what you're saying. There's so many different options, and it would just be a real pain to look through everything, right? One thing though that could help with this is remember when we can use some of these like advanced features, we can choose to look only in the stuff that ends in, like PY, so maybe we get rid of some of like the README or the documentation, but still there's like so many things. There's 406 results in 32 different files, like you can see here, right? So yeah, I like the approach of doing source must be saved. One sort of strategy here is to, when you're doing a global search command, try to think of like the most unique thing that would still find your specific code, right? Because we don't want to have the issue where we're looking through a bunch of results, like if we search up something more generic like save, for example. Okay, awesome. So we get to this function that is responsible for the dialog. But then what were, maybe we can start backwards. So what were like the two user actions that caused this code to actually be run? Did anyone get to that? Did someone else? Were you about to? Yeah, go ahead.
One was check module.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, check module. Okay. And where is that? How do I
If you go to run, and then it's that one.
Cool, yeah. And then what is the other one? You could just like.
That was the one I found.
Yeah, so the other one is just like run module. Actually, I had already demoed that, like showing the user action that leads to this. But so just to clarify, if you do run module, it'll lead to this pop-up box. But then also if you do check module, it'll lead to this pop-up box. Okay. But importantly, how can we find this? So was anybody able to actually like get to this? Yeah, in the back there.
So I use command and click on save dialog and found that it was called by this get file name function.
Okay,
and
yeah.
then I do the same thing with that get file name function.
Okay.
Yeah, those two.
To see the references.
Calls. Yeah.
So you saw these two then?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then did you just like look through further? I guess you came to this function and saw check module event. Cool. Anything else? Any other approaches people use from this function? Yeah.
Very similar to use find all references, like right clicking, and then that shows the.
Find all references? Okay, awesome, yeah. Any other approaches? Let's just make a list of all of them. I know we can just know some of the different approaches. Were there any other ones? Nothing. Okay, cool. So what I used that I thought might be a little bit easier or quicker, so those all are totally fine. Like you find all the places that call ask save dialog, and then you can just see like the function name or function header, and it'll kind of reveal it. Another one that could be useful here that I used was show call hierarchy. So through this, you actually get to see like the full like paths or all the different paths that lead to that function being called, okay? And so the reason this is super useful is I don't even need to, like at this point, I just did show call hierarchy. I expanded get file name, and then immediately it's check module and run module event, okay? Call hierarchy also goes further, right? It'll show like from like the very like inception of the chain of calls, like the chain of function calls or method calls that lead to this function. You can like backtrack all the way to like the initialization of our program running. So like for example, we're in check module event, right? And then when you click on this, it looks like, so this is like what actually calls check module event is this sort of init function, okay? And it looks like we are doing some text.bind option here, okay? I won't maybe discuss what this is right now, but you can sort of explore a bit on your own and see. Then when we click this init, which is even like one level below, it seems that there's this class called editor window that is initialized. And let's see if we can even go further. Yeah, there's another thing called output window that's initialized, and okay, it looks like it stops there. So for at least like this, chain of method calls, we can trace it all the way back to something called output window that is initialized, that then initializes something called an editor window, and then we have all these different things that lead to it, okay? So yeah, that was great. I just wanted to sort of highlight the variety of like code navigation techniques that you can use, but also there's typically some way to find what you're looking for without having to do this sort of like guess and check process of searching through file names or like reading code until you sort of like happen upon something that seems to be useful, okay? Oh, and then one more thing I thought was interesting. This is a check module thing. So until last night, I actually didn't really know what this check module thing does. Or was anybody able to figure it out? Like, what does check module actually do? Yeah.
In the README, it says that it checks the syntax.
Yeah, so the answer is that in the README, it's checking the syntax of the code. So yeah, I just wanted to test this. Like, say we had, you know, like 14, 15, and then like, you know, 16. Say we like wanted to initialize a list like this. And then we do check module. So we'll have to, of course, type in the name. Let's just do test.py. And then it should actually, okay. I think I have too many files called test.py open. Let me close that. Hopefully this realizes. Okay, so this actually is not catching the syntax error. I thought I did an example like this earlier, where there is a syntax error and it's not able, and it should catch it. Oh yeah, okay, awesome. So it says invalid syntax, perhaps you forgot a comma, and when you press OK, it gives a highlight of like an approximate region that the syntax error happened. But as you can see, there are some issues with the thing. I wonder if this is technically a syntax error, actually. It should be, right? But anyway, so maybe this is even an option for a feature in idle that we want to maybe make a bit more powerful or want to improve. But I still thought it was pretty cool that there's, yeah, this check module sort of command. Are there any questions on, like, we're sort of wrapping up code navigation now. Are there any questions on this activity or this code navigation stuff that we talked about last lecture? Okay. Again, just want to re-encourage like using these shortcuts quite often. It's really gonna speed up the process and help you find like a full, complete answer much more quickly. Okay. So let's get on with the activities and sort of the demos for today's content about making experimental code changes, okay? So the first activity that we're going to do is actually just another sort of code finding activity. So let me go ahead and rerun idle lib. What I want you to do is actually just find where, you see how there's these three little arrows here when I open the Python shell? So let me actually go to settings and increase this font here, maybe even 29, I guess. Okay, so you see these three arrows here. When I do something like 2 + 2, it goes to 4. If I do like print hi, it shows up again. The activity here is for y'all to just find where this Python prompt is set. And then how did you go about finding the prompt, and then how did you actually confirm that this is the right place, okay? So again, let's take a couple minutes to do this. We might skip out on the part where we discuss this time, depending on the time. But for now, start working individually, and then we'll be walking around. Raise your hand if you need some help or have a quick question, and we can get to you. Also, this one does have a bit.ly link, so this is CSE 190-4-11-1, okay? And the questions are the same that's on the slide.
You basically want to know what function runs the code.
What function, yeah, is responsible for setting this Python prompt? That is responsible for it like popping up on the Python shell. So try to use some of the code navigation techniques that we use, but then think a lot about the last two questions. Or sorry, the last question. How do you know that this is correct?
The second.
Okay, let's start discussing in groups now, but make sure you fill out the bit.ly thing, okay? That's how we're gonna give you attendance. So discuss, but also fill out the form.
Yeah, so then we should only open Oh yeah, so you can even exit out of this. Yeah. Oh, is that doing like when you maybe you can double But I think the easiest way to is to and then we can open
Okay, let's wrap it up in the next like minute, and then we'll start to go over the answers. Okay, maybe 30 more seconds to wrap up the responses on the bit.ly, and then we'll go over it together. Okay, yeah, so let's wrap up writing out the responses to the bit.ly. But let's go over this. Can anybody share what they found for like where this is actually implemented? Yeah, in the back there.
Sidebar.py.
Sidebar.py. Can you actually just tell me how you like found it?
I control shift F the 3 arrows.
3 arrows, yeah.
I scrolled through that and assumed it was in sidebar.py because that's where it was when you showed us the interface.
Oh really? Okay. Wait, let me. Oh, you mean it was in the sidebar, like over
Yeah,
here? Oh, okay, cool.
So I assumed it was you passed it already, but
Okay.
and then
Oh yeah, sidebar here.
And then the top says like the file, the class, and the function name.
Yeah.
And then I just changed like the 3 arrows to like 3 exclamation points and ran it again to see if that was the
Oh, nice, awesome. So you changed it to something like this,
Yeah.
and then ran it? Cool. And how did you like rerun it? Do you just do the?
just control C rerun.
Okay, awesome.
You don't need to see
Oh yeah, thanks. Good catch. Yeah, so you also have to save it if y'all didn't catch that. I didn't save the sidebar.py. So now I made those changes. Whoops, So it looks like we changed line 478 here to 3 exclamation points, and we can rerun it. And yeah, awesome, it does show up. Were there any other approaches people used? Yeah, go ahead.
If you could look in the README and you search up shell, it'll also lead towards that part of the UI, and then you can just do a local search on that file. README.txt, or you go to the README file. So.
Yeah, I was just doing the go to symbol, but I think maybe file names don't actually count as symbols. So, yes, there we go. If you do it without the pound, yeah. So readme.txt, and then sorry, can you say that again?
Then you can just do a local search, so just control F.
Yeah.
And then you do the 3 arrows. Or sorry, that's not 3 arrows, shell.
Oh, shell. Okay. And then did I do shell? Let's write this
Oh no, I did prompt, sorry.
From. Oh yeah.
And I got all pieces of the way over.
Oh nice. Okay. So then you saw sidebar.py, and then was it when you got to the file? How do you find it?
Just
Search for the. Okay. Awesome. I think it's gone now because it would be exclamation points. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So we'll just like wrap up that discussion there. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Doing the global search for the 3 arrows or using the README. I think both of those are sort of good approaches that go through this. I do think the global search for the 3 arrows though, as we saw, like there are a lot of results. Okay, so let's just redo this. And if we do the 3 search again, there's a lot of different results, right? There's something in config dialog, PyParse, PyShell. One thing that I think is pretty tempting to look at is PyShell, right? Because what we have here is the Python shell. And if you're just looking through the file names or doing a bit of code reading, this could seem promising, right? But like I mentioned, I really wanted y'all to think about the last question here. How do you confirm your finding? I mean, maybe since also the name of the lecture today is about making experimental code changes. A really good approach is to just make a small code change to these 3 arrows. And yeah, we can do something like exclamation points. And then we would want to see, like say we are just, first we're hypothesizing that it's this code that is responsible for it, right? The 3 arrows in PyShell. So we might make that change and then we would just run the actual module and it stayed the same, right? So the fact that it stays the same might tell us that this, assuming we've saved the file and everything, that this might not be the actual place, right? And so we can sort of repeat this process. We would maybe want to search through some different places. I think I mentioned this during last lecture as well, but there's sort of like an implicit step in all of these code navigation techniques, okay? That implicit step is using some code reading, but with a bit of like deduction skills as well. So what I mean by that as an example here, for example, in this PyShell result, right? So actually let me just revert this change. So this is where like one of our results was in the global search. We came to this like pyshell.py file. But one thing that might help here is just looking at the actual function that we're in, right? If we go to the outline view or just scroll up, we're in like the show warning function. So this might not be, you know, the right place to look for where this like global Python prompt is set up, right? Same thing when we search for these three arrows. Some of these like file names we might not really need to investigate further because it doesn't really seem like a place that it would be implemented. Of course, you know, your sort of deduction skills will maybe sharpen as you work with the code base over time. But something that I think we heard from the first answer was when we were looking at this feature, it seemed like it was in a sidebar, you know, and so that kind of can guide your initial search for where this feature might be implemented, okay? Okay, that was a bit of a warm-up. Now I want to actually have y'all try changing this Python prompt. So just to show y'all the actual place that it's implemented, when we do these three searches, it's in sidebar.py around line 478. Hopefully it's the same like line number for you. But what I want y'all to do is actually change these 3 to a 6, okay? And then try running it to see what happens, all right? And so that's gonna be like the start of the activity, but really, again, I want y'all to try to get to these last couple questions here. So it's not gonna show up as you expect, but then try to figure out why it's not showing up how you might expect, and what changes you might need to actually make it work, okay? And I'll just give you a hint right now. If you're in the outline view and looking through like where we made this change, so we made this change in update sidebar, there's going to be another couple of functions. I'll just tell you the function. The function is update font, okay? Try to read through update font and see if there's any understanding you can gain for why these like 6 arrows are not showing up as we expect, okay? And maybe think through what are some code changes you might have to make in update font to get this to work how you want. And again, fill out the bit.ly link for this activity as well.
It did change it.
So if we change it to S5, it's going to work. But if we change it to file,
Arrows, it might not work, right?
it was his idea.
So, I mean, that's a great insight, and that's something you could also, you can play around with like keeping nuancing, you can change some of these things, but yeah, that's a great point. You try to figure out how to make this work for the 6 arrows. Alright, so just another reminder, make sure you fill out the bit.ly link as well. And then maybe in another minute you can start discussing with the people next to you if you haven't already.
Oh, this one's the,
That works, yeah, that works.
the size of that.
This one is partially.
It just makes it more
Okay, let's round up the discussions in the next minute here. Just make sure you fill out the bit. Give you 1 to 2 more minutes. So it looks like people are still working. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about how we could make this work. Okay, can first somebody share what happens when we actually do change the 3 arrows to 6 arrows? Someone that hasn't answered yet? Anybody? Okay, yeah, you can go ahead.
After the third arrow, like the 4th one gets cut off.
Yeah, after the 3rd arrow, the 4th one gets cut off. How did this okay, so yeah, after you make that change, it looks like this 3 are visible, but then the 4th one you can start to see, but then you can't quite see it. So was anybody able to figure out a way to make all 6 actually appear on the sidebar? Yeah.
So under update font, there's like the canvas canvas configuration. It's ×3 hard coded, so we can choose it to ×6 because we have 6.
×6, awesome. Okay, and then do we need to change the 4?
I love that.
Love that? Okay, cool. And then are these the only changes you made? Okay, awesome. So now when we do it, yeah, perfect, right? We're able to see all 6 arrows, and it looks like there's just maybe some added space. So one thing we could do, let's just change this to like 40 and see like what the impact of this really is. Because one thing we don't really know here are units actually. We just have like tk font.measure character. So this, maybe based on some code reading, we can think that this is like some number, that is based on whatever the width of a character is, the largest width of a character here. And then we're just like multiplying that by 6, but we don't know if this number is in the magnitude of like single digits or double digits or something, but then we're let's try adding 40 and see just what happens. And again, this is maybe not, okay, so it only added like a little bit of it. You see when we went from like 4 to 40, this was the change, but when we multiplied, instead of multiplying by 3 and we multiplied by 6, it was a pretty sizable change, okay? So this maybe isn't so crucial to like the understanding of like how do we make this change work, but maybe just a bit more informative onto like what are we really dealing with here with the size of the font, okay? So this looks like a code change that definitely works. Were there any other like code changes that people made that also got the job done? Yeah.
So since that line was basically updating self.canvas, I commented out that line and searched where self that canvas was set, and then found that it was like declared, defined in the widgets, and in that assignment, there's a parameter called width, so I changed that.
So like over here?
Yeah,
Okay, and then, sorry, what was the thing you actually changed?
width equals 30, I changed it to, let's say, 100.
Oh, okay. Wow, I've never tried this before. Let's see what happens. So just for people to know, how did you actually get to that canvas? Did you just click on the canvas thing here? Like,
Yeah,
command click on it?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it looks like we get to this. Awesome. Okay, and then we change the width from 30 to 100. And let's see what happens. Okay.
Did you?
Oh, yeah, we have to uncomment. Good catch, good catch. So let me do control minus to jump back to this. Right, you did mention we have to comment it. Okay. Oh, nice, okay. And then we pretty much get there, but maybe you want to change it to like 120 or something like that. And then it should also work. Okay, cool. So let me go back up to uncomment that. So yeah, those both seem like code changes that would get the job done. I do want to spend a couple minutes talking about something called code quality here, because this is going to be really important when we get into actually making changes to the code base like we just did, okay? So remember, the task here was to just update the Python prompt from 3 characters to 6 characters. And one like really good answer that we got that does make it work is to update, since now we have like a thing that's 6 characters long, we should do character width times 6, right? But then say like later on we want to make a change that instead of these 6, maybe we want to also add like a smiley face or something, okay? Like a space and a smiley face. Then what's going to happen when I run this? Yeah, it'll get cut off, right? Because we added more to the prompt, and now we have another part of the code base that we're going to have to change, right? We might want to change this 6 to something like 10 or something, right? Just to make it larger. So this is a concept that you might have learned about in 110 if you've taken it before, something called coupling, which just means that these 2 pieces of code are like tightly bound together, right? And specifically the 2 pieces of code that I mean are line 509, where we have to set the width to be equal to like the number of characters in the prompt, and whatever is like written over here, right? But what we want to do is get away from this, all right? So here's, so code quality is just this really like, it's like an all-encompassing term that just means, to me, like good code, okay? And there's a lot of different like aspects of good code. You want to write code that is testable, okay? Code that is testable typically has like a lot of functions with clearly defined inputs and outputs, and then we can write a test that, you know, has some like sample inputs, and we check if the output matches as expected, right? Think of a simple like add method or add function. We can easily pass in 2 numbers like 2 and 5 and see if the output is 5, right? Like the correct return value. We also want to make code that's reusable. So if we're going to be doing some, like writing some new code in a large code base, chances are it might have to be used for implementing another feature. And so we want to sort of make it generic enough, or like, yeah, maybe like abstract enough, such that other features can use the same thing that we are using, right? Another thing is efficiency. This is related to like runtime. We don't want to write something that has like, you know, 3 for loops nested within each other. If we can maybe use some data structure that saves a lot of like memory complexity or saves a lot of time complexity. The last 2, portability. This is like, we want to write code that will run on multiple systems or environments. We don't want it to be highly dependent on like the Mac file system, because someone who has a Windows might have to use this, right? And then the last one is extendable. This one is sort of the thing that we're going to be focusing on in this lecture, is that we want to write code or make code changes that is easy to update or change later on, okay? And so one thing that I want to point out here is that the way that this code was initially written, so remember the initial code looked like this, right? And the sort of unfortunate truth here is that when we change those 3 arrows to something like 6 arrows or 10 arrows, then there's another part of the code base that we also have to like understand and then correctly modify, right? And you can make the argument that this maybe is not so extendable, right? Because it's not that easy to update or change. I think that's maybe a fair critique, but I also do want to point out that this extendability thing is important when you anticipate changes to the system, right? Like if you're working at a company and you're working on a new feature and chances are you might have to modify that feature later on, you definitely want to write extendable code, okay? So the point of this is not to say that, oh, the design of, this part of the code base is bad, because that's disrespectful to the people that wrote like the CPython thing. But I think really the intent was not that people are going to be changing this Python prompt, and so I think there wasn't so much attention paid into, okay, if people change this to have 6, then they're going to have to like modify something else, okay? But I do want to cover maybe a better way to implement this change so that y'all can see an example of what maybe a better code quality change is. And keep in mind, it's not like a right answer here. You can make arguments for why this change would be better code quality versus a different change being better code quality. But let me just go over like sort of what I would do as something that would maybe make this code a bit more extendable. So I think we could have like just an actual variable in shell sidebar. Okay, that's the class that this function is written in. And we can just make that equal to whatever prompt we want, okay? Let's say it's like this, okay? It's 5 arrows, a space, and then a smiley face, all right? Now that we have this self.prompt, we can just use this variable as like sort of a stand-in for whatever the prompt might be that are impacted by whatever the prompt is. So let me just make that a bit more concrete. We know that whatever like is in that string for the prompt is going to have an impact on this like update sidebar, right? Instead of having the 3 arrows here, we can actually just put self.prompt because we specifically want to show this, right? We want to show self.prompt if this is what the code is that we eventually reach. The other place that's impacted is here, right? We don't want this to be hard-coded as like 3 or 6 or something, but what is the change that we can put here that will be based on self.prompt? Yeah.
Self.prompt, I think it's length or something.
Yeah. In Python, it'll be len self.prompt. This is just getting the number of characters in self.prompt, okay? Admittedly though, this isn't technically the most accurate because you might have noticed this previous line. It gets a character width based on either the arrow or the dot, because I think the developers anticipated the prompt will either only have the 3 arrows or the 3 dots when you look back here. So technically you might want to do something like, I don't know, list of self.prompt. This basically converts the string into like an array of each character, being like the arrow, 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 the space, the colon, and then the parenthesis for the smiley face. But let's just keep it as the other version for now. I don't want to get too confusing in all this. But now you can see how all we have to do to update this, the prompt now, is only change the variable that is self.prompt, right? And then all the other things are taken care of because we wrote code that is a bit more extendable than how it was originally written, right? Now we see that we're always going to be having at least the width being our prompt and then a little bit extra. And then let me just say, let's have a few more, right? When we make this change, it should still preserve that, right? So this is an example of a slightly better change that would just be a bit more extendable. So keep this in mind as we release the next assignment. We're going to release the next assignment tomorrow. But I think we're at time now, so we'll go ahead and end the lecture now. But make sure you submit assignment 1 today or tomorrow if you're able to get it. Thanks everyone. See you all later.